The only thing that can top off a dominant performance in the main event is if the fighter follows it up with a terrific call-out. Makhachev nailed the call-out and decided to go after the pound-for-pound king in his hometown. But the question remains, will Alex be able to defend all the takedowns? And will the winner be the #1 pound-for-pound fighter? Let's take a look. First up, a look at why the featherweight king wants to move up. Ever since the trilogy with Max Holloway, people have claimed that there's no real challenge for Alex Volkanovski down as featherweight. His last few performances have been very dominant, and he's considered being arguably the greatest of all time at the weight class. Moving up seemed logical, and it's what the champ wanted as well. He thought he had enough strength to face the bigger guys, and the supposed height disadvantage had never really been a problem for him. At the end of the day, Volk wants to be a double champ, and he's promised to keep both divisions busy. It should be noted that Volk is on a big win streak, just like Makhachev, and it'll only be the third time two guys with double-digit win streaks face off. Alex is undefeated inside the octagon, and he's never lost at featherweight or lightweight in his entire MMA career. You probably know by now that he used to weigh more than 200 pounds back in his rugby days, and that strength and power have been there with him even when he fights at 145. Alex showed how much he wanted the lightweight title fight by volunteering to be the backup fighter at UFC 280, all the way in Abu Dhabi. When you're an established champ with nothing to prove and still go out of your way to do that, you'll get whatever you want. Next up, making it official in Abu Dhabi. The ideal scenario for Volk would have been for the fight between Charles and Islam to play out and for him to face the winner. And he also said he'd like to fight Charles as he's the bigger name. At least he got one out of his two wishes. During fight week, both men in the main event accepted Volk's challenge. To make it even better, after Makhachev got his belt, he gave the microphone to Khabib, and his mentor used the opportunity to call the featherweight champ so Islam could fight the pound-for-pound #1 and #2 fighters one after another. During the post-fight press, Khabib talked about the matchup and how they wanted to go to Australia, Volk's home base. He also revealed the game plan they're going to have, which would be clinch, takedowns, and left hand. Nurmagomedov was confident that even if the opponent knew exactly what they're going to do, they couldn't stop them. We'll talk about the stylistic matchup and how it could potentially play out later. Let's take a look at whether the winner should be the #1 P4P guy. After capturing the belt in a dominant fashion, Islam earned his spot on the pound-for-pound list. He sits at #3 right now after beating Charles. Volk's teammate Izzy sits at #2, and he might possibly pass his friend and be #1 soon. It makes all the sense in the world for Alex to maintain his spot and solidify himself as the best in the world regardless of weight class if he manages to beat Makhachev. But can the same be said for Islam, as he's the bigger guy and people already expect him to win? Not many people know exactly what the criteria are for judging who lands where on the list. Right now, Kamaru Usman is higher than Leon Edwards, even though he got knocked out by him recently. There are also many non-champions who are ranked higher than the champions themselves. It might be a challenge for Islam to solidify his spot, especially if he does what he plans on doing, which is making it look easy. Make no mistake, Volk is a tough fight for any man walking the face of earth, but Makhachev is known for dominating the best fighters, and in this case, it might be his biggest enemy, as it's taking away the credibility of how tough his opposition is. Next up, Volk guarantees he'll get back up if he gets taken down. One of the funniest moments that night was Islam calling Alex to the cage and calling him a short. Now, Volk is a guy that can take a joke, but he was serious when he said it's hard to hold down a guy with short legs. He's very confident in his wrestling ability and thinks he can be in incredible shape where he could defend takedowns all day. He's also aware that he might potentially get taken down by Makhachev. The lightweight champ's takedowns aren't the most conventional. He doesn't necessarily go for the legs. His upper body lock, hip throws, and foot trips are what make him an elite-level MMA grappler. But Volk thinks he's being underestimated by his opponent. He believes in his skill set and said that he'd make Makhachev very uncomfortable on the feet, and that'll force him to go for the takedowns desperately. He also plans on surprising Islam by how strong he is. Islam would be looking at him the entire time, thinking he's too small. But when they're in the cage, the Dagestani would be struggling to take down the smaller guy. And even if he does take him down, Volk gets right up to his feet, and that might be the recipe for breaking Makhachev mentally. Up next, would the size disadvantage help Alex? Many people think the toughest challenge for Islam is the guy that he's already beaten in Do Bronx, but it would be disrespectful to Alex to not consider him to be a worthy opponent, and possibly someone that can take away all of Makhachev's hype. In an interview with submission radio, Alex argued that his small and stocky figure might be a blessing. He talked about how, on his feet, he holds all the advantages. Islam has beaten a lot of guys, but none of them have as good a stand-up routine as him, and his footwork and distance control are some of the best in the UFC. Not to mention, he has fought Max, who's 5'11" and looked great at doing so. The Aussie said that he'll obviously be training a lot more for that Dagestani wrestling attack, and he'll be fully conditioned to do that for 5 rounds. He understands that the weight and size would be a big factor, but in this case, it might just serve him. Next up, should Dariush fight on the same card? With an 8-fight win streak and initially being the backup for UFC 280 main event, Dariush has been on a tear and looks unstoppable. After beating Gamrot, it should be undeniable that he gets a title shot. Unfortunately, the UFC wants to make this fight between Islam and Volk, but it makes sense for him to get the winner. But Benny isn't a guy who's willing to sit out and wait for his opportunity. In the words of Max Holloway, he isn't waiting for the elevator, he's taking the stairs. Dariush has said that he wants to stay active and fight anyone he can. The 2 possible matchups for him right now are Charles Oliveira and the winner of Poirier and Chandler. Unfortunately, there's nothing more he can do to ensure he's next in line, but he's still willing to put his claim at stake because he just loves fighting. The best option for him would be to go to Perth, so the timelines are the same for him and whoever has the belt at that point. It would be a real robbery if we never get to see him fight for an undisputed title. It's like the Tony Ferguson story all over again. Let's hope this time it's different. Finally, what's going to happen at featherweight? When you have the champ as the most active guy in the division, you know there's a shortage of contenders. Right now, we have Yair, who's coming off a win over Ortega and is one of the most entertaining guys to watch. There's Josh Emmett, who beat Calvin Kattar. And now we have another contender in Arnold Allen, who's also coming off a win over Kattar. The most logical thing would be for 2 of these guys to face each other in an interim title bout. Yair is okay with sitting out and waiting for Alex to return, which is surprising as he hasn't competed a lot in the last few years. So maybe the right solution is to make an interim title and match Allen and Emmett, and the winner gets to fight Volk upon his return. The main issue right now is inactivity. The top guys don't want to fight each other in order to stand out because they know the champ is active and their turn will come. Maybe having a title on the line will shake things up and get them to sign the contract. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Volk can overcome the size disadvantage? And should Islam be the #1 P4P guy if he beats Alex? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.